Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Chantel and today I'm going to be doing my bi-weekly, I'm getting into the habit of doing a bi-weekly wrap-up for my reading, which I think on balance, so far at least, I'm liking better than just doing a monthly wrap-up. It's allowing me to talk a little bit more in depth about the books that I'm reading. It's making it easier for me to gather my thoughts together, make some notes here and there potentially, and consider what I'm actually going to talk about a little bit more than just sort of a quick summary and boom, 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 here's what I thought, here's what I liked, and to try to get through everything at the end of the month. So I think the bi-weekly wrap-ups are probably going to continue, at least for the moment. And so that's what I'm going to do today. So yes, I have finished a few more books since the last time I did this 2 weeks ago. I'll probably still put up my stats for the month of May on the screen because Storygraph does generate a nice little monthly stats page for me, and it's really easy to just pull that and stick that up on the video, so I will do that. As you can see, I did only finish 4 books total in the month of May, but the page count was quite high because, of course, one of the books that I finished in the month of May was quite literally Anna Karenina, so I don't feel bad. I don't feel bad about the fact that I read Anna Karenina. And I also finished a couple of other pretty big, dense books in the month of May by the end of the month. So I'm fine with my reading, happy with it. I think it's good. I'm having a good time. And so, yeah, I'm just going to do a little wrap-up of the things that I've done the past couple of weeks. First of all, I did finish Mirrored Heavens by Rebecca Roanhorse. I'm not going to say too much about this because I did put out a video where I discussed the trilogy as a whole. This is the Between Earth and Sky trilogy, and so you can watch that video if you want my more detailed thoughts on this. But generally speaking, I quite liked it. I enjoy Rebecca Roanhorse quite a bit as an author. Her writing is good, her characters are interesting, the world building is great. Overall, this is quite a good book and a good finale to a good trilogy. So this was Mirrored Heavens. Another book that I finished by the end of the month was The Eagle and the Heart by Helen Castor. Well, actually, I may have finished this on June 1st. I may have actually finished this on June 1st. But nonetheless, I did finish The Eagle and the Heart, the tragedy of Richard II and Henry IV. This was my Historathon quarter 2 read, sort of a medieval history book, basically. And I also pretty thoroughly enjoyed this. I think that Helen Castor is a very engaging history writer. I really appreciate it when I can find someone like this who is genuinely an expert in the field, because in my experience, it can be somewhat tricky sometimes to find someone who actually is like a trained historian and who can actually write a very readable kind of narrative history. Those two things are not always necessarily the same, right? Some of the more sort of fun, readable, popular history books are often written by people who don't really know much about the subject. They're not sort of formally trained historians, and sometimes it shows in the quality of their research, which sometimes is lacking. But this is not that, right? Nor is this a very dry, scholarly kind of analysis. This is, again, it's very readable, it's very enjoyable. Occasionally it reads almost like a thriller, like a political thriller. So it's quite fun and quite informative, and she does, her research is also quite good, right? So, yeah, she's, an engaging writer, telling a good story that, and shockingly, it does manage to have some continued relevance. This centuries-old story of hereditary monarchies. The personality of Richard II she likens pretty, sort of heavy-handedly to certain authoritarian wannabes in today's world. As her examination of the way that Richard II operated as a king, the way that he saw his place as the sovereign of England, the way that he understood his authority, and the way that he did not seem to understand that, the sovereign in, sort of the ideal perfect world, right? The king is really supposed to do things for the good of the state and the good of the people. And Richard II did not seem to understand that, right? He seemed to be far more concerned with just being able to do whatever he felt like doing, from moment to moment. And so, and also I think her portrait of Henry IV is as a man who's sort of racked with guilt over his own actions, of feeling like he was pushed to do things that he had to do, but didn't necessarily want to do, and felt very guilty about that. I think is very fascinating. And yeah, it just ended up being a really good read that I enjoyed a lot. So yeah, that's The Eagle and the Heart by Helen Castor. The third book I finished, I've already returned back to the library because another hold came in. But yeah, I read The God of Lost Words by A.J. Heckwith. And this is the final book in the Hell's Library trilogy. So I'm really pleased with myself for finishing 2 trilogies in the matter of like a couple of weeks. It's a great feeling. It feels good. It feels really good. This is a really fun trilogy. I like books about I would say the Hell's Library trilogy is not really about books. What it's about is it's about storytelling and the power and cultural importance of storytelling. And I think that Heckwith really understands that on a level that I appreciate very much. If you don't know, the premise of the Hell's Library trilogy is that, obviously there's a library in hell. The first book in this series is called, I believe it's called The Library of the Unwritten. I will put it up here. There's literally a library in hell that is full of unwritten books. These are books that exist in the minds and imaginations of humans, but that never get written, never get published. These are all sort of hypothetical stories. And, some of them are bad and cliched and cheesy and silly, and some of them are very good and very profound. There's a person, a dead person, who is the librarian of this unwritten library, and whose job it is to prevent the stories from escaping into the real world. And this librarian's name, she's one of our main protagonists, is Claire, and she is not really a damned soul, because there's a lot of sort of back and forth about to what extent the library belongs to hell, or to what extent is the library its own sort of sovereign thing. It just happens to exist in hell. So Claire is maybe not necessarily a damned soul, but she's certainly not a soul that is going to heaven. And so there's a lot of, and she encounters some other characters of various sorts, and builds up this sort of found family. She's, sort of outwardly kind of not a very likable person. She's a little bit prickly, a little bit reserved. And she sort of gradually opens up to these various people. And of course, there's a plot about, a sort of overarching plot about how this library works, and hell may be sort of coming after this library or trying to destroy the library. I don't want to get too much into it because A, I don't want to get into spoilers, and B, I think I probably want to do a video discussing the series as a whole, as I did with the Between Earth and Sky trilogy, so I'll probably be doing that soon, and so I don't want to talk too much about it. But anyway, The God of Lost Words is the final book in this trilogy, and I enjoyed it quite a bit, and so I'm glad I read it, and it's great that I also finished another series. Excellent. So those are the books that I have finished reading, and I've also started reading a couple of more books, so I'm going to talk about those next. First off, I've started reading The Grapes of Wrath by John Steinbeck as part of the sort of group read that is sort of informally being called the Summer of Steinbeck, and a bunch of people are involved in it. There's a Voxer chat that we're all sort of participating in and sort of talking about it as we go. Yeah, I'm about a little over 200 pages into this book. I'm not quite halfway through, and you can see the number of tabs that I've already put in this book. I've already had to put in this book because, yeah, boy, there's a lot going on here. I'm absolutely loving this book. This is an incredible read. I'm immersed, I'm invested, I'm having a lot of thoughts and feelings about everything that's going on here. If you're not familiar, The Grapes of Wrath is a Pulitzer Prize winning and Nobel Prize winning novel about the Joad family, and they are homesteaders, tenant farmers in Oklahoma in the 1930s, and they are being forced off their land along with many other tenant farmers at that time by the big, essentially the big farming interests. Big Ag is pushing everybody off their land, and they're forced to try to travel west. They're trying to travel to California because they believe that California is sort of the land of opportunity. Fruit trees are just everywhere, and all you have to do is walk around and pick the fruit off the trees, and there's so many jobs, and wages are high, and they just think it's going to be great. This is a portrait of the failures of capitalism in America. This is a portrait of the failures of the American dream. This is a portrait of people who are forced to do what they deem to be unthinkable in order to survive in a world that does not care about them at all. And it's, again, I'm not even halfway through this book, and it's already incredibly moving, incredibly powerful. Steinbeck's prose is amazing, and the pointedness with which he singles out these issues and the causes of them it feels so, unfortunately, it feels so fresh, because so many of these problems they still exist, right? So many of these problems he's talking about still exist. It's about environmental failure. It's about not just environmental failure, but it's about the ways in which we have failed the environment. It's about the ways in which we fail each other and we fail our communities. The ways in which big banks are simultaneously made up of people, but are also these sort of nameless monsters that completely lack all humanity. And it's really working for me. Let's put it this way. It's really working for me. I've already tabbed so much of it, but I have to read a little bit here because this one just gets me. One man, one family driven from the land, this rusty car creaking along the highway to the west. I lost my land. A single tractor took my land. I am alone and I am bewildered. And in the night, one family camps in a ditch and another family pulls in and the tents come out. The two men squat on their hams and the women and children listen. Here is the node, you who hate change and fear revolution. Keep these two squatting men apart. Make them hate, fear, suspect each other. Here is the anlage of the thing you fear. This is the zygote. For here, I lost my land is changed. A cell is split, and from its splitting grows the thing you hate. We lost our land. The danger is here, for two men are not as lonely and perplexed as one, and from this first we, there grows a still more dangerous thing. I have a little food, plus I have none. If from this problem the sum is we have a little food, the thing is on its way. The movement has direction. Only a little multiplication now, and this land, this tractor, are ours. The two men squatting in a ditch, the little fire, the side meat stewing in a single pot, the silent, stone-eyed women behind, the children listening with their souls to words their minds do not understand. The night draws down. The baby has a cold. Here, take this blanket. It's wool. It was my mother's blanket. Take it for the baby. This is the thing to bomb. This is the beginning. From I to we. If you who own the things people must have could understand this, you might preserve yourself. If you could separate causes from results, if you could know that Paine, Marx, Jefferson, Lenin were results, not causes, you might survive. But that you cannot know, for the quality of owning freezes you forever into I and cuts you off forever from the we. Anyway, it's really good. I'm having a really, really, really good time with this. It's so poignant and it's so full of humanity. I was also struck by the way that the contrast between the way that the poor people of this book, the Joads, and when they encounter the Wilsons, they immediately form a community. They immediately begin helping each other and doing mutual aid, right? They understand this on a fundamental level, that we're all people and we all have to help each other out. The contrast between that and the way like the salesmen treat people in this book, right? The understanding, the salesmen are as they try to sell the family a bad tire that's going to fall apart. The salesman says, well, I'm not running a charity here, and I have to think about myself, and I'm not, it's very much the I versus the we, and that understanding of community and mutual aid, I think, is possibly what's striking me the most about this book so far. So yeah, this is really good. I'm thoroughly enjoying this book. I've also begun to read Cemetery Boys by Aidan Thomas. I don't know what to say too much about this. I think a lot of people have probably read this. This is a queer YA coming of age story with a little bit of romance and a little bit of magic, and it's very fun. I think I want to just read the sort of jacket copy to describe this book, because I think this is probably the best description of it that I can find. So, when his traditional Latinx family has problems accepting his gender, Yadriel becomes determined to prove himself a real brujo. With the help of his cousin and best friend Maritza, he performs the Quinces ritual himself, and then sets out to find the ghost of his murdered cousin Miguel and set it free. However, the ghost he summons is actually Julian Diaz, the school's resident bad boy, and Julian is not about to go quietly into death. He's determined to find out what happened and tie up some loose ends before he leaves. Left with no choice, Yadriel agrees to help Julian so that they can both get what they want. But the longer Yadriel spends with Julian, the less he wants him to leave. So yeah, it's a little bit of romance, a little bit of coming of age, a little bit of, you know, trying to get your family to understand who you are and accept you and love you for who you are. You know, this is exactly my kind of YA, honestly. I don't read a ton of YA because it's not for me. Like, literally, I'm a 40-year-old woman. YA is not written for me, right? It's written for teenagers. But that doesn't mean I don't enjoy a good coming-of-age story once in a while, and this is the perfect kind of thing for me personally. And of course it is Pride Month, so I am reading, you know, I always read a fair amount of queer fiction. I just do. That's just my thing. That's a thing that I really like to do, and I'm always sort of doing it. But you know, I was thinking about sort of, well, what should I read for Pride? What queer books am I thinking about reading for Pride Month? And then I went to the library, and this was literally just sitting out front on they had a little display for Pride Month, and this was just right there on that display, and I was like, yeah, okay, sure, sounds good. So that is Cemetery Boys, and yeah, I'm enjoying it quite a bit so far. Also, it's not in the dreaded first-person present tense, which, thank you, Aiden Thomas, thank you. Because yeah, just third-person past tense. Some fun queer characters that, you know, they have really good inner lives. They read to me very much like, so far at least, Yadriel reads very much like a teenager who's, you know, he's struggling a little bit with his identity. He's struggling against his family. He's feeling like his family doesn't accept him, and his family is clearly having a hard time. You know, very traditional family with very traditional gender roles is on the struggle bus dealing with his transition, and it's not as simple as his family are transphobic bigots. That's not what's going on here, right? It's more complicated than that. And that is where a lot of the emotional turmoil comes from, really. So yeah, I'm very invested in this as well. I'm having a good time. That's Cemetery Boys. So that's what I have read and am currently reading. And I do have a couple of books that I am planning to read very shortly because I got them from the library. I got a couple other books from the library. So, yeah, I'm going to show those off now because these are probably the next couple of books that I'm going to be reading. First, again, in keeping with sort of the Pride Month theme, I picked up Lavender House by Lev Rosen. This is an historical queer murder mystery. Yes. Here's the jacket copy. Lavender House, 1952, the family seat of recently deceased matriarch Irene Lamontagne, head of the famous Lamontagne soap empire. This estate offers a unique freedom, where none of the residents or staff hide who they are. But to keep their secret, they've needed to keep others out, and now they're worried they're keeping a murderer in. Irene's widow hires Evander Mills to uncover the truth behind her mysterious death. Andy, recently fired from the San Francisco police after being caught in a raid on a gay bar, is happy to accept. His calendar is wide open, and his secret is the kind of secret the Lamontagnes understand. Andy had never imagined a world like Lavender House. He's seduced by the safety and freedom found behind its gates, where a queer family lives honestly and openly. But that honesty doesn't extend to everything, and he quickly finds himself a pawn in a family game of old money, subterfuge, and jealousy, and Irene's death is only the beginning. The gates of Lavender House can't lock out the real world forever, and running a soap empire can be a dirty business. So yeah, it seems very much up my alley. I enjoy good murder mystery, and the fact that it is historical and queer on top of that is just like, that's pushing all my buttons right there. So I'm really interested in reading this. It's not very long. I imagine I'll get through it pretty quick. Most murder mysteries are pretty quick reads for me. So yeah, looking forward to this one. Gonna have a good time with this. Yeah. And then also, I had a hold come in for The Tainted Cup by Robert Jackson Bennett. So I don't think I need to explain this to anybody, but you know, a Holmes and Watson style detective duo take the stage in this fantasy with a mystery twist. So yeah, it sounds, again, exactly up my alley. It's more mystery, but this one is explicitly in a secondary world fantasy, with lots of fun sort of, it's biopunk. I'm reading this for the biopunk square in my R Fantasy bingo board. And there's, yeah, it's again, it's a sort of Holmes and Watson-y type murder mystery, which is one of my favorite things. I'm a big Holmes and Watson girly. So yeah, I think this will probably be fun and very up my alley. I'm excited to dive into this as well. So that's my immediate reading plans. At some point, I also do have to read Fool's Fate by Robin Hobb. I'll have to get to that very soon. I've got a lot coming up, and I'm planning to participate in Jane Austen July. I will probably do a video discussing my plans for Jane Austen July when we get a little bit closer to July. So probably in like a couple of weeks. Plan on that, because I'm very excited about it this year. This is her, this year is the 250th anniversary of Jane Austen's birth. She was born in 1775. So, yeah, that's, so there's going to be lots of fun stuff going on, throughout the year for that. And Jane Austen July is, of course, a sort of readathon celebration of all things Jane Austen and all things Regency England and Georgian England. So, that should be fun. And the group read this year is Emma, which is, I think, at least right now, my favorite Jane Austen novel. At this point in my life, I think Emma is my favorite Jane Austen novel. So it'll be really fun to reread Emma with a group, and discuss it with a group of people who also really like it. So yeah, that is what I'm planning on. Otherwise, gosh, stuff that I'm watching. I haven't been watching a whole lot. We did watch, I did go see the new Mission Impossible film, the final Mission Impossible film. It was definitely playing a lot on franchise nostalgia in sort of wrapping up the whole franchise. There was a lot going on there. It's a little bit messy, but very silly, very enjoyable. Enjoyed the stunts. Had a hard time with the deep sea diving part of that movie. I tend to get a little ooky about deep sea diving and like floating in space as well. Like, so if you're deep sea diving or you're in the vacuum of space, I'm probably gonna be a little bit upseticus about it. So that was a little bit crazy. It's funny how like the biplane sequence at the end of that film, towards the end of that film, did not upset me nearly as much as the deep sea sequence. But yeah, it was super fun. The only other things I'm really watching, I am still watching Murderbot. I'm having a good time with Murderbot. It's fun. I really appreciate that the episodes are short and don't overstay their welcome. I like the 25 episode format, the 25-minute episode format for Murderbot. It moves along at quite a clip. Every episode ends on kind of a cliffhanger, so you're like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen next? Oh my gosh, it's already over. And then you want to watch the next one immediately, and that's super fun. I did finish watching Doctor Who. That final episode, that was a mess. That was a mess. I tend not to get very down on Doctor Who. I consider myself a relatively casual Doctor Who fan. I'm not the Doctor Who fan who's like always getting mad about, oh, they messed up the lore, or oh, they, Doctor Who is very silly, and I don't watch it for the lore. I watch it for the silliness and for the fun acting. But I have to admit, I did not like a lot of the stuff that they did with that final episode of the season. And I think some of it may be because they had to do some pretty quick reshoots to alter what they originally had planned because of things happening. And I'm going to talk about I have to talk about some spoilers here. So I am going to put like a timestamp somewhere here so that if you, for whatever reason, don't want to hear me talk about the last 10 minutes of the season finale of Doctor Who, you can skip to that timestamp. So, spoilers from here on out. Okay. I was really upset that they kept Ncuti Gatwa's leaving as a secret. I don't like that. Like, immediately I was like, oh, he's not. At first I was like, oh, he's definitely not regenerating, because I haven't heard that he's leaving, and I haven't heard that that they're doing it, recasting the Doctor. So clearly he's not leaving yet, right? I was sure he was sticking around for like at least another season. No, apparently he is actually leaving, and that was the regeneration episode, and that bothers me. I think something about, because Doctor Who is kind of unique in that we do generally know when a doctor is going to leave, and when we're going to get a regeneration episode, and when we're going to get a new doctor. I was very like, I don't like the fact that I didn't know going into this that it was going to be a regeneration episode. So that, like, right off the bat, like, that puts me just sort of on the back foot immediately, just because, again, Doctor Who, I'm supposed to know when this is going to happen, and I didn't know, and I don't like that. That bothered me. I also I really did not understand what they did with Belinda. I thought that was really out of left field, that suddenly making Belinda a mom and having her be like, oh yeah, I'm a mom, and that's what's, that's the correct sort of version of the timeline of events, is that she was a mom and she has to get back to her kid. That was really shoehorned in. There's been no indication the entire season that Belinda had any interest at all in becoming a parent. So, like, that was just weird. That's just weird gender essentialist heteronormative nonsense in something that should be really sort of open and queer friendly and not heteronormative. Like, what the hell was that? I did not understand that at all. Shoehorning in a child like that to make Belinda suddenly a mom and have it, and literally, like, rewriting the whole season to say, oh yeah, she's a mom now. That also really rubbed me the wrong way. And then, on top of it all, he regenerated into Billie Piper. And look, I like Billie Piper. I think she's a really good actress. And I really love Rose. Like, I love Rose. I do. I love Rose. She's great. I love Rose as much as the next person. But we gotta move on. You guys, Russell T Davies has got to move on. We already, like, and it just kind of bothers me. I saw somebody else say this on social media. It really kind of bothers me that Ncuti Gatwa, the first openly queer Black doctor we've ever had, his run is bookended by 2 stunt castings. Again, I love David Tennant. I love Billie Piper. Why did we have to bookend the first Black openly queer doctor with 2 stunt castings? Can we not just move on? I think Doctor Who would be so much better if they just tried something more new. And I get that, like, Jodie Whittaker's Doctor was, in terms of the viewership and in terms of the overall opinion of the fans, was a failure. And so it was like, well, the last time we tried something new, it failed, right? The last time we tried to give you the first woman doctor, and it flopped. But, like, it's the same sort of situation that we get with a lot of media, where it's like, well, films directed by men can fail and fail and fail and fail, and we'll still get a bazillion of them. But we get one movie directed by a woman that flops, and then it's going to be 15 years before we have another female director. That's the kind of situation that we have. Like, it's the misogyny, the racism that is still sort of really inherent in our culture, and especially in within capitalism, that says that, like, well, men make flop movies all the time, right? Lots of movies flop every year, and most of those movies are made by men, but nobody's saying, well, that movie flopped, so now we can't have it. That proves that men can't direct movies. Nobody says that, right? So it's one of those things where it's like, you know, we've had a lot of different doctors over the years, and some of them have been better than, and some of them have been worse, and some of them have been more popular, and some of them have been less popular. They've all been white men, but the first time we get a female doctor, oh, it turns out, like, the writing team on that wasn't great. They had COVID messed everything up, and they had a bunch of other outside stuff going on. But no, really what it was the fact that we hired a woman, and so we can't hire another woman again, because that would be silly. And it's, you know, I feel like I'm afraid that the same thing is going to happen with the Ncuti Gatwa, where, you know, they're going to say, well, you know, despite the fact that we've had all this other stuff going on that maybe, you know, was a problem, we're going to say, well, it was Ncuti Gatwa who was the problem, and it was the fact that, you know, we had a Black and openly queer doctor, and that's why it failed. And so we're never going to see that again, or whatever. And it bothers me a lot. It bothers me a lot. I'm concerned. I'm very concerned. So yeah, that's my rant about Doctor Who. Anyway, that's what I have read, what I am reading, what I will be reading, and what I've been watching recently. Fight me in the comments about Doctor Who if you want, or not. You can choose not to. It's fine, I promise. You can choose to just not do that. But if you have something to say and a constructive discussion to have about any of the things that I talked about in this video, feel free to leave them in the comments below. You can like this video if you liked it. Subscribe if you want to watch more. Yeah, that's about all I've got for you today. We'll see you in the next one. Bye.